When someone says, "I feel older than I am," it sounds simple. But underneath that sentence lives an entire story. Because people don't just feel old out of nowhere. It's not always about wrinkles, age, or numbers. Sometimes it's about emotional fatigue, about carrying years that life never officially counted. Have you ever met someone who's only 25 but talks like they've lived 50 years? They're not pretending to be wise. They just feel tired in a way youth isn't supposed to feel. It's like their soul has seen too much too soon. And psychology has a name for that: emotional aging. Emotional aging happens when your experiences outpace your timeline. When life hands you lessons that normally take decades to learn: loss, responsibility, heartbreak, survival. Each of those moments adds invisible weight to the calendar of your mind. You grow older emotionally long before you grow older physically. For some people, it starts in childhood. The ones who had to become the strong one early, the caretaker, the peacemaker, the problem solver. When other kids were learning how to play, they were learning how to cope. That kind of early responsibility silently rewires the brain. You learn to stay alert, to read emotions, to anticipate danger. It gives you maturity, yes, but it also steals something: your right to just be young. That's why, years later, even when the world sees you as young, you don't feel it. You move through life with quiet seriousness, as if you've already seen the end of every story. Psychologists call this premature emotional socialization, when children internalize adult roles too early. And while it often builds strength and empathy, it also creates a lasting sense of emotional exhaustion. People who feel older than they are often live in two timelines at once. Their body belongs to the present, but their mind keeps revisiting the past. Old fears, old wounds, old responsibilities that never truly left. They crave rest, not just from work, but from being on guard all the time. It's not laziness. It's recovery from years of emotional vigilance. And there's another layer: disillusionment. Feeling older can come from realizing too early that the world isn't as fair, kind, or magical as you once believed. Maybe you lost someone before you learned how to grieve. Maybe you discovered that people lie, or that love can vanish without reason. That kind of truth doesn't just age you, it transforms you. You stop seeing life as a playground and start seeing it as a puzzle. For many, this emotional aging shows up as subtle detachment. You stop getting excited about things everyone else seems thrilled about. You look around and wonder why people still believe in certain illusions you've already outgrown. It's not arrogance, it's perspective. You've simply seen behind the curtain. And once you do, it's hard to unsee it. Psychologically, this connects to something called existential awareness. The mind's recognition that time, meaning, and mortality are real. Most people touch that awareness in midlife, during what's called a midlife crisis. But for some, it arrives early. Maybe through trauma, introspection, or simply being emotionally sensitive. When that awareness comes too soon, it creates a mismatch. Your age says you're young, but your thoughts belong to someone much older. That mismatch can feel lonely. Because how do you explain to others that you're tired, not of living, but of feeling everything so deeply? How do you tell your friends you don't find comfort in noise anymore, that your peace has become quieter, older, more reflective? People might think you're distant, but you're not. You're just living in a different emotional season. And here's something few people realize: sometimes, feeling older than you are isn't a burden. It's a response to depth. Sensitive people process life with more emotional bandwidth. They notice the subtleties, the pauses in conversation, the tone shifts, the unsaid things. That awareness is a gift, but it's also heavy. Because when you see more, you feel more. And when you feel more, life becomes louder. That's why emotionally mature people often seem calm. They've built that calmness out of necessity. It's their way of quieting the internal noise. But the calm isn't always peace. Sometimes it's fatigue wearing a gentle face. Another factor psychologists note is empathic overextension. When you carry the emotions of others for too long, you absorb people's pain, soothe their storms, fix what's broken, until one day you realize your own energy is gone. It's like your empathy has aged you. You become someone who looks at joy with gratitude, but also with distance, as if it's a delicate thing that can break at any moment. People who feel older than they should often have a complicated relationship with hope. They still believe in good things, but their belief is quieter, cautious, like someone holding a fragile glass in trembling hands. They've learned that joy is real, but also temporary. So instead of chasing happiness, they learn to appreciate stability. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Feeling older doesn't always come from pain. Sometimes it comes from awareness, from simply paying attention to life too closely. When you watch, think, and reflect more than others, your brain fast forwards through emotional growth. It's like you've lived multiple lifetimes in one. You start to understand things most people your age haven't even questioned yet. You see patterns in people, in love, in time. And that awareness, while beautiful, can make the world feel small, because you've already understood what many are still discovering not. So, you move through life quietly, observing, almost like an old soul trapped in a young body. And when people tell you to lighten up, you smile politely, knowing they don't understand. It's not that you don't want to be carefree, it's that your mind has already seen too much to go back. And that's the paradox of emotional maturity. It gives you wisdom, but it also costs you innocence. It deepens your understanding, but it softens your enthusiasm. It teaches you to let go gracefully, but also to feel solitude more sharply. People who feel older than they should aren't broken. They're just living life at a different emotional speed. They've reached insights others will discover years later. And sometimes that awareness can feel isolating, like being the only person awake in a room full of dreamers. But beneath that heaviness lies something profound, a quiet strength. Because even when they feel older than their years, they keep moving forward. They carry the fatigue with grace. They laugh, they love, they show up. Not because they feel young, but because they've learned what it means to endure. There's a quiet truth about people who feel older than their age. They rarely show it. They laugh at the right moments, they show up to plans, they talk about normal things. But beneath that, there's a certain stillness in their eyes, a kind of wisdom that doesn't shout. It's the stillness that comes from seeing how fragile everything really is. Love, trust, time, even joy. In relationships, that emotional aging creates a unique pattern. These people love deeply, but cautiously. They don't fall fast, they fall with awareness. They ask the unspoken questions first. Will this connection still make sense when the excitement fades? Can I trust this silence? Will this person stay when things aren't easy? It's not cynicism, it's emotional foresight. They've lived enough in their minds to know how quickly something that feels infinite can disappear. Psychologists sometimes link this to attachment fatigue, when the emotional system becomes wary of forming new bonds because past experiences felt too heavy. You start protecting your peace even from things that might heal you. You crave closeness, but you fear the cost of it. So you hover somewhere between wanting and withholding, loving and letting go. For those who feel older, this cautious love is not lack of feeling. It's an overflow of understanding. You've seen how words can lose meaning, how promises can fade, how people can change. So your heart becomes selective. Not closed, but careful. You value quiet consistency over grand gestures. You seek depth over display. You crave people who feel real, because the shallow things exhaust you now. And that's part of the emotional paradox. The older your soul feels, the smaller your circle becomes. You stop tolerating chaos disguised as passion. You no longer chase validation. You crave peace. But peace can be lonely, especially when your peers still find excitement in things you've already emotionally outgrown. That loneliness is rarely loud. It's subtle, the kind that visits you in conversations where everyone's laughing and you suddenly feel disconnected, like you're observing rather than belonging. It's not arrogance or depression. It's the mind realizing it's operating on a different frequency. For some, that emotional gap can create what psychologists call temporal dissonance, the discomfort of feeling out of sync with your age group. It's like watching the same movie as everyone else, but seeing a deeper storyline they're not aware of yet. And you can't unsee it. So, what do people do when they feel older than they are? Some withdraw into solitude, not to escape the world, but to breathe. They need space where their depth isn't treated like a mood. Solitude becomes a sanctuary, not a symptom. It's where they can lay down the emotional weight they carry for everyone else. But others go the opposite way. They overcompensate. They joke more, work harder, distract themselves. Because sometimes feeling older makes you hyper-aware of time slipping by. You start counting years like seconds, feeling pressure to achieve, to catch up, to prove that your inner weariness doesn't make you stagnant. That's another quiet irony. People who feel older often look like they have it all together, but inside, they're racing against something invisible. And that invisible race is often with themselves, with the younger version they never got to be. Many of them grieve silently for the childhood or freedom they missed. They wonder what it would have felt like to be carefree, to not analyze every feeling, to just exist without carrying meaning in every moment. That grief doesn't always look like sadness. Sometimes it looks like maturity, because maturity, at its core, is often the scar left by responsibility that came too early. But here's the beauty most people miss. Feeling older isn't always loss. It's also clarity, the kind that lets you appreciate things others overlook. Morning sunlight, a quiet drive, an honest conversation. When you've emotionally aged, small things become sacred. You no longer need life to be allowed to feel alive. That shift from excitement to contentment is not decay. It's evolution. Still, there's something healing about remembering your younger self. Because emotional aging doesn't mean your inner child is gone. It just means they've been waiting for permission to come out again. Sometimes the way back to balance isn't through trying to feel young, but by allowing yourself to feel simple things again, to laugh without analysis, to make plans without overthinking, to hope, even if carefully. Psychologists call this inner child integration, reconnecting the wiser parts of you with the innocent ones. When that connection happens, you stop seeing your maturity as a burden and start seeing it as a bridge. You realize that wisdom doesn't have to erase wonder. You can carry both, the softness of youth and the steadiness of age, in the same heart. Because here's the secret most people never say out loud. You don't actually feel old because of years. You feel old because of unprocessed emotion. Every disappointment you didn't release. Every role you had to play before you were ready. Every version of you that never got to rest. They all live inside you, quietly asking for acknowledgement. When you start giving those emotions space, when you let yourself grieve what you lost and forgive what you couldn't change, something miraculous happens. You begin to feel lighter, not younger in body, but freer in spirit. And that's what emotional rejuvenation really is. Not denial of time, but peace with it. People who feel older than they should are not broken. They are often the most emotionally awake, the ones who listen deeply, love sincerely, and see clearly. They're the ones who remind others what really matters when the noise fades. But even they deserve rest, not the physical kind, but the emotional kind. The kind that comes from being understood, because at the end of it all, What makes you feel heavy isn't age, it's carrying meaning alone. The moment someone looks at you and says, "I get it. I feel that too," some of that weight quietly melts away. That's the power of shared humanity. So, if you ever feel older than your years, don't rush to fix it. Maybe it's your soul's way of saying, "I've been paying attention." Maybe it's proof that you've lived fully, even through pain, even through reflection, even through silence. But also remember, the world still has laughter meant for you, music you haven't danced to yet, sunsets you haven't paused to see. Feeling older isn't the end of youth. It's the beginning of awareness. And awareness, when carried with gentleness, doesn't age you. It refines you. So take your wisdom, your calm, your depth, and wear them lightly. Because you're not as old as you feel. You're just someone who learned early what most people learn late. That time doesn't define you. How deeply you live does.